This is the conversation I had with the founders Lynnetta Smith and James Smith from Combat Boots to the Boardroom. They're a nonprofit organization located in Richmond Hill, Georgia, that works with veterans to help transform their lives by navigating the sometimes difficult challenges that come with serving our country. I've broken the podcast up into several segments because we covered several topics from transitioning military to civilian life to PTSD and one of their programs, Prosper, where veterans have the opportunity to network with several different industries unlike any organization that's out there. If you are a veteran or know someone who is, pass along the information. Here it is, Combat Boots to the Boardroom. So I want to start off by reading your mission statement first. Combat Boots to the Boardroom. This is your mission statement. So our mission is to transform lives and promote economic independence for veterans and their families through entrepreneurship, education, leadership and development training, health and wellness support, and assistance in transitioning into the civilian sector.
Absolutely.
Right? How did you get there? Right? So I think for a lot of veterans who are getting out to transitioning from military life to civilian life, they may not know what to do, how that transition is going to happen. So what was your journey, like what was your connection with the military and getting to Combat Boots to the Boardroom, would you say?
Trial and error.
Trial and error?
Trial and error, definitely that. It took us to go through every up, every down to get to where we're at right now, which is why we founded this organization, because we knew there were amazing organizations already established, but as a military family, we didn't see what we were looking for.
Okay, so there was a need for something.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't necessarily there.
Right, and we didn't have it figured all out either.
Right.
In the beginning.
And you don't have to.
Nope.
Right?
We just wanted to start, and we wanted to use our life as a testimony to other people. You don't have to have it figured all out. You have to start when transition hit our door first, and it was like an overwhelming feeling that we had never felt before because we thought we had it figured all out.
Right.
And when you tell them your path, you went to college, I went to college, kind of thing.
Yeah, so I mean, like for me, particularly, I guess one of those things when you have soldiers and they get out, you try to counsel them, give them the best advice possible, saying, hey, make sure you do X, Y, and Z, hey, make sure you get your stuff together, make sure you have a plan. And it's one of those things where when that happens, you all of a sudden, okay, now you try to take that advice, but at the same time, when it hits you, it's one of those things where it's, okay, it's in my face, so what do I want to do? Okay, well, I said I want to do this, but now all of a sudden, I really don't want to do that anymore. Now you got to check. Now it's about trying to find yourself. Like, okay, what is it that I want to do? Who am I?
Right.
Because you spend so long being in the army, you become the army. So you lose track of, you lose touch with yourself, who you actually are. So it's about finding yourself, figuring out who you are. So you can actually start a new journey.
In whether it be the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, you have these certain ways, these standard operating procedures, things that are laid out for you, right? And you could be in for 20 years, 30, 40 years, and that's all you know, right? Now you're trying to transition out and say, what's the right path, or how does what I was doing in the military correlate with the outside world? Like, what am I going to do?
Or should it?
Right? Or should it?
Or should
right?
it?
Or should I find another path? Maybe there's something else that I'm passionate about or something that I love to do. But how do you get there? Right? Because when I got out of the military, it was kind of the same thing. Like, what do I do? Do I do what I was doing in the military? And if I want to do something different, who do I talk to?
Absolutely. So I think for us, that was making sure we had a support system. That is one of the main things, I think, because as a spouse, not every spouse navigates the same way. Some are stay-at-home spouses, some take care of the kids, some are in the working field. I think we were fortunate enough that I took control of my career aggressively while he was serving, and he supported that throughout his career, and it put us in a better position for him to take that time out and take a year out to figure out who he was. Right? And still be okay to not knowing and not putting a timetable or a time limit on it, because too, it's not a switch. I tell people a lot of times is these are the same people that took an ASVAB test usually when they were about 17, 18 years old, and then their scores based off their knowledge, skills, and ability at that limited time decided the trajectory of their life based off of their MOS, and then that's how the school, and that was their path within, that's what their resumes aligned to. But they've evolved from 17, 18 years old.
Sure.
But if you did not like reclass or and you stayed in that same job set, maybe there's no job out here for you to drive a tank here, you know what I mean, or work on different things like that. Everybody's job is different, or maybe at that time your knowledge was, hey, I'm going to go into the nutrition, but that really wasn't what you wanted to do. That's just what your skill level was. So during that year that he transitioned, I think I became almost like I didn't even really want him to get another job right away. He probably did, because I had like a huge honey to-do list.
Right.
But too, and it was like different things so he could figure out who he was, which is this book. You know, he had I'm super excited to talk about this, because the creativity side of veterans, I don't think that we tap enough into that, because they don't know the lucrative pathway. How can they make money, support their families, and still tap into their creativity side? And when he wrote this book, it was birthed from a passion from 4th grade, and he took him to 41 to birth it out.
Wow.
I think tomorrow, number 2 will be done.
Wow.
Yeah, something like that. Am I close?
Yeah. Close. The first part of you doing it's one of those things where when you're writing, you realize when you actually finish the book, you're not finished, because you have to go back and actually.
I think that's
you have to go back and read and actually edit everything and change stuff that this doesn't sound right. Maybe this scene doesn't work. So it's one of the things where finished, but it's just
starting.
Yeah,
it's never
started.
finished.
No.
Like when you think you're to the end, then you realize, kind of like you were talking about in the military, like you took the ASVAB at maybe 17 or 18, and that was based off of your current thinking, your current education. You may do 20 years in the military and then find out there's a lot of life lessons and things that I've learned along the way, and you don't have another ASVAB along the way to see how you gauge in the civilian world now, right?
That's why they struggle so hard, and that's why they go immediately. Most of them go to what they were doing, but that's where our new program Prosper comes into play, where we saw amazing organizations focusing on maybe like one thing. And we were sitting talking, it was just like, I don't see a place where we can have the veterans to have a safe space where it's just veterans only that can come through this program, and it takes them through 8 different industries and lets them tap into something they didn't even think or didn't even know how to navigate into.
Right.
And so what we tried to do is use our platform, our connections, our organizations, our community to help us partner with us to go into these multiple areas, so that way it's almost like a ecosystem, behind the scenes, comprehensive, like cohort group, where we don't want big groups, because we don't want the vets to get lost in there when they're meeting these new places. So whether it's for a job, it's for entrepreneurship, it's for networking, camaraderie, because that's another thing when they get out, where's my battle buddy at? Right? And that's another thing, it's lonely. It can be lonely. Like you could have friends here, friends there, but to have that everyday connection. And our goal was to build a table so that way our veterans and our community could not be ignored, but it could also have a plate at that table.
Right. Yeah, and especially if you're not in a military town and you go somewhere in the middle of Iowa, or Michigan, where I'm from, and there's not a military base, and you go back home, or you go somewhere else. Like you said, there's not a lot of former military, or you may not know them, where to find them, so you can make that connection and maybe learn from them, because they've gotten out before you, and hey, these are the things that I tried to do, and I made some mistakes, and it was a hard road. But to help somebody, kind of like, helping your child. Hey, I've gone through these things.
Absolutely.
Let me show you.
Yes.
So you're still going to make mistakes.
Yeah, and it's okay.
But maybe it's not going to be as hard. But yes, failure is okay.
Yeah, that's how you learn.
As long as you're not giving up. But you have to continue moving forward. And I like the Prosper program, because when I got out, they had TAP. Yeah. I think every branch has TAP. Yes. But not to disparage the military, but I think it's very limited sometimes. They do, what I remember is they had resume writing, don't know that it's the best. They had us take, it was almost like it wasn't an ASVAB, but it was almost like a personality test or something. They said, we think you would do
best in these areas.
Almost like a Myers-Briggs, almost.
Right,
Kind of
exactly.
Like
but there's not really any guidance. Let's take you here, or let's put you in contact with these people and see, is this really what you want to do?
Yeah.
And like you mentioned with creativity, you might have this mind for creativity, and the military sometimes that's not. They're like, we're not looking
for that.
We're not looking for arts and crafts and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, maybe it's not arts and crafts, but doing multimedia or something like that in the military, it's got its place in some areas. It's very limited, but then trying to transition out of the military and do that in the civilian world can prove to be very difficult.
Yeah, so that's I think that's probably like I tell people, so many people at this time of the year, they're ready to like go into the next year, but we still had a demand on our business for this year, wanting things to blossom this year to catapult us into 2024. And so I was like, long as we still have days left in this year, I'm not ready to pivot to 24. And the fourth quarter, we were honored to be approached by a lobbyist that now represents our nonprofit in with our House of Representatives, our senators in Georgia, but also has now opened us up to the entertainment field because he heard our heart, heard from the creative side, just like, we can go in these industries because I feel like here, everybody always wants our veterans because they're disciplined already. They know how to train, They know how to show up, they know how to come, but they don't always give them the best positions. And some of these people have led, equivalent of multi-million-dollar companies, what they have led within their platoons, their brigades, and in the transition position doesn't always look like that. And that is the problem that I feel like you could want us on one side, but the other side, there is not the equivalent in pay. There's not an equivalent in position, I believe. So that was some of the things I talked to Coastal Entertainment Alliance about, as well as Georgia Matters, this company that represents the entertainment field, because here in Georgia, the entertainment world, where we're talking about film, we're talking about esports, when we're talking about gaming, we're also talking about music, all of those things like that, bigger than LA right now. And so last week we had the opportunity, I did, to go with our lobbyists to meet with these studio execs, also to meet with camera people that own that, graphic designers, all these folks that will tap into another side of our veterans, and to see what a partnership would look like to add them to Prosper, so we can take them to the studio so they can see themselves working in lighting, right? Studio set design, things like that, that I feel like they can have a career pathway. It doesn't take them to go 4 years to college to do that. But if they wanted to do that, I don't believe that we're marketing that side heavy at any nonprofit like that's catering strictly veterans that I saw. And that's the element that we wanted to open up, especially because my husband wrote this book. How do we take this book from a book to a screenplay to the big screen? How do we do that? Right? How do we do that? How does his trailer become that? And let us tap into our community. And there's so many other veterans that have so much creative mind because they've seen things. They've been exposed to different things. And when we talk about PTSD, because that was the first year that we put a cause to our nonprofit, that's a great outlet for them to get the things that is inside of them out.
Right.
And without trauma, but then also making sure the environment is safe, which is why our program is only open to veterans, because your person right next to you has served at different times if you have, but they have the relatability, they understand what you're going through, so then it's almost like an internal therapy, because then they can open up to somebody that they can relate to. So that's why entertainment right now is super important for us, and we're super excited about opening that door up for our veterans.
So if somebody's interested in the Prosper program, how would they go about getting involved in that if they're in the military and they're looking to transition to the civilian world?
I would love them. As long as you're in your 180-day window, you can already be transitioned out. What if you're in a position now that you're like, you know what, I'm doing this because I have to do this, but this isn't really what I want to do, where Prosper is only 1 day a month. right? Because we know people have to work,
Right.
they have to feed their families. It's going to be very taxing, but it's like 4 to 8 hours outside the day that we go to Atlanta. That's like a whole day, maybe 2-day commitment that we're asking them to go on to. But they go on our website, www.cb2tb.com. There's an application, not a lot for them to fill out, but we need some background information on you so that way we can get started in the new year with this cohort class and start exposing y'all to all different things when we're talking about also I'm excited about the budgeting classes, right? Excited about that, teaming up with a local bank here that will be showing them about business credit, business loan, personal credit, teaching them some of the things that they might have thought they knew, but let me show you what else is available for you, because that wasn't your mission set while you were in the military. And if you've already transitioned out, maybe you just haven't had exposure to all the things that are available to you. So super excited about it.
Yeah, because a lot of that is not offered in the military.
No.
So it's kind of like, I guess the way of thinking about it is if you raise your child and they didn't take those finance classes in high school, and now they're supposed to go to college and they're supposed to know how to budget their money and all these other life skills, right? You're in the military and now you're coming out and you're like, I don't even know where to start, right? You're trying to find a new position, but then you have the finance and you have all these other things that you're trying to do. And how do you focus on those things? And you need help, right? Because you're not obviously supposed to be an expert in all these areas.
Nope.
But if you can find an expert and somebody that focuses on these areas, they can help you and assist you make that transition a lot easier.
Yeah, which is why it was important for us to touch multiple industries, because something might awaken you. Or a person might, right?
Right.
Because through the journey, some of these organizations and these companies that are partnering with us on this journey, they've been there. Right. And so, too, it's a mentorship thing, too. One thing in our nonprofit, we mentor veterans and the youth. And that is one of the most fulfilling things that we do, to see somebody's life transformed just by you sitting down and listening to them. Right. They don't necessarily have that. And building those relationships for trust, because it's beyond just like a regular therapist. I'm not a therapist, but someone that says, you know what? I'm not here to pick your mind like on that side here. I'm just here to help you and encourage you the way and impart what I know, or bring out the people that I do know and connect you so that way you can be a better citizen and show up. But I do think I know about the TAP program. Myself, been a federal employee 19 years. I've seen so many even not have the ability to go through that program because of work situations, or when they went, it was like checking the blog because they didn't know, because I still got one foot in and I'm trying to get the other foot out, and you're overloading me with a lot of information, but I'm still doing a job every day. And it depending on the position that the person holds, that sometimes they can't even concentrate on the TAP program because they have to still go back to work. Everybody's not afforded the same thing, and they're like, I'm still doing this. So I don't know. I think they're getting a little bit better with like Skill Bridge program, and then we'll try to offer that later in 24 with our for-profit business that we're having, to start to get a hold of them on one side, so then we can tap them into the other side with Prosper from the nonprofit side too.
Yeah, and you can give somebody a bunch of information, but if you don't have action, if you don't have an execution plan, how do you do this?
Yeah.
Then it proves to be very difficult.
Yes.
Right? It's just like teaching somebody in a classroom. You show them, but if you don't show them how to apply it,
that's right,
they're not going to know what to do.
No,
and then they're going to feel like, okay, I'm a failure. I don't know what I'm doing. I guess it's all me.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's not. It's really not. Just like, too, you give them a book, you have to have a teacher to help them navigate through the lessons there. And that's the thing, is just like, I feel like TAP is one-dimensional, right? It's like I give you one piece, but after you transition, your transitional leave is over, there's nobody there, right? And so I saw the need. I promise you that's why we didn't start combat like this. We started with the resume writing and all that, but we took surveys during COVID with other vets, and this is what they were saying that they wanted, which is caused us to do like a whole change in how we thought, which is not super popular always when you change a system that people love and they know, because it's like, oh, it's working, but it's not working. These are these one-on-one conversations that we have with other veterans in the community that we see that are just struggling, or they get on the job and they quit within 3 months because also the new employer doesn't know how to also speak to them, their language, the new supervisor, right, who have maybe never even entered their world.
Right.
And you have to navigate with them a little bit differently. How you handle them is different than how you handle another employee. They're not trained
Right.
to even tap. They want us, but they don't have the skills to be able to, I feel like, make sure that they're taken care of. And that's why you see them leaving.
Yeah, and I think like you mentioned with like other organizations where they think that, hey, we're doing something good, we're getting good feedback, but sometimes you really have to listen to the voice of the customer, and that's like the veteran, like really talk to them one-on-one, because sometimes I feel that, you know, it may apply to women too, but you ask a man, how are you doing? I'm okay, I'm fine,
good.
right? I'm good, right?
Especially if they don't trust you. They're not going to go
Exactly,
deep
right,
into their
right.
feelings.
You're not in the foxhole with them, talking to them, saying, hey, what's really going on? Or, like you said, maybe a supervisor can't relate to them because they've never been there before. Now, if the supervisor says, hey, I'm former military, let me tell you about my story, then they may start to open up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But really being able to see and hear from them and say what is really needed as you're transitioning out of the military, or maybe you're already out of the military and you have some issues that you're trying to navigate. What do you really need? What kind of assistance and help do you need to maybe heal or transition better into the civilian world?
Which is why it can't be a one-off fit all, because it's like they might need more time to go to doctor's appointments.
Right.
Right? So if you got a point system, and I might point out, right, then you're looking at my attendance, but part of my attendance in my absence is because I'm trying to get healed so I can show up better in your job. And where that regular civilian, they might not have to go through all the things, so they have not been exposed to all the things, seen all the things. And these are not excuses. These are just real life situations. So when I hear some of our partners say, like, we get them and they quit, but it's just like, have you tried to address them from where they start? I always tell people, meet people from where they're at.
Right.
And then, two, give them a little grace. Grace goes a long way. But that's why, too, it's just like, I know it's a business and you're looking for them to solve a problem, show up so you can make money, all that stuff like that. But if you're going to go after them, you got to think about it totally different when you bring them on board.
Right. Completely different perspective,
Yes.
right? Because, you know, God forbid somebody has PTSD, they have some issues that they're working through, and we hear in the news that a veteran commits suicide.
Yeah.
Right?
That's real.
A lot of people didn't know. They didn't know that they were struggling with those issues, right?
Yes.
And like you said, sometimes it takes multiple times going to see a therapist or a doctor or something. And then if you have kids, that makes it even worse, because then if they have doctor's appointments, your spouse has a doctor's appointment,
Yeah.
you have to take time off of work, and then you feel like, you know what, I'm just going to put myself on the back burner. Nah, I'll push through it. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're not.
Nope.
Right? And it kind of goes deeper inside, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And I think that, you know, we need to get better about that to be able to accommodate veterans in that case, to where they can go and seek that help and they don't feel like they're a burden.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
You're always still trying to find ways to self-medicate, whether it's through drug, alcohol, or anything else illegal, just something to actually cope.
Right.
As opposed to actually going actually get the help that they need, because it's easier.
Right.
It's like I can just say, I can just take this drink and hey, and it'll help me forget about it, and I don't have to worry about doing anything.
Yeah,
else.
you don't have to take the time off from work, right? You can
So
just
it's-
drink and numb it for a little bit. You'll be fine.
And that's why we have the new for-profit. You know, it's not by chance that we are starting a DUI Academy, because we know it's hitting our veterans, right? So to give them where they have to serve and they have to do community service, we have another platform for them to do it at, that they can relate to it. And then, by the way, like, hey, did you know we have Prosper out there?
Right.
Right? You've been coping this way. Here, let me show you a different way. Let me expose you to different people, but be in a safe place for them, because he can speak their language on one side, I can speak it. I've supervised them on one side, but then also I'm a military spouse. On another side, I can speak it to their spouse, and just kind of like, and then we have our kids too that also found one of our programs. So we tried to make sure that we have a cohesive unit, so that way when we get them and onboard them, whether it be Combat Boots to the Boardroom or J&B DUI Academy, we can meet them where they're at.
And I like that because you said whether you're a spouse or you're a military member, a military member, they're going to be thinking differently than obviously the spouse. And sometimes they're going to butt heads because they have a completely different perspective. Whether they've been to war, the spouse they can comprehend how, hey, I was at home, I was with the kids, I was doing these things when you're gone, but they're completely different. But being able to have somebody at both of those perspectives to work through it and say, hey, you're going to make it through it, but these are the things you have to do.
Yeah.
And these are the things you have to work on. And maybe trying to see from another perspective of that individual.
Yes.
Right?
It's important, because even when we started combat, James was the, I want to say, guinea pig kind of kind of thing. But too, it was important for us to bring our kids with us on this journey. Because we didn't want it just to feel like work. And then they are not here, they're not a part of it, but them coming through this journey, serving as well. And that's helped them also understand when we have to be gone to do different things, or hey, why when we have to meet with other people, why their kids feeling this way. Which fast forward this year, we implemented our mascot, which is our companion buddy, Dreamer. And he's heavy for the youth side of the house, where we can take him into the school systems. We've taken him at different events, taken them to the daycares where their children there are mostly the daycares that we've been going to. Their parents are military, deploying to this day. And we read this book to them about the deployment bear, and they raise their hands and get so excited to have Dreamer, the mascot, there representing like whose parent is serving.
Right.
And these kids now say, hey, we have another environment, like our community is reaching out to us, they're understanding us. And sometimes that's why we brought Dreamer in, because we bring it to their level. This whole cartoon kind of image, they fall in love with it, and they want to take pictures with it, and they want to, every time we turn the page and somebody reads, and they can raise their hands when we're asking questions, so that way that'll help them cope a little bit better while mom or dad is gone on this journey, because people forget sometimes that we are still deploying right now.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, I didn't have kids when I was in and when I was deploying. But unfortunately for a lot of people, they are deploying to have kids. And it's not so much about them, but about the kids that, hey, mom or dad's gone.
Yeah.
And how do they cope with that?
Yes.
You can't get a phone call, you can't get a letter for, days, weeks, months. And that can be very difficult for the kid, and they're trying to learn. They're still just growing and trying to learn, and they're not understanding why they're gone for so long.
Let alone
right?
the spouse
like we
be
would.
stressed out too.
Right.
All the responsibility is now shifted from two parent to one. Or what if that soldier was a single parent?
Right.
And then now they have to activate their family care plan.
Right.
And this child has to uproot and go somewhere that's not home for them while the parent is serving. There's so many factors, I think, to more than from a job perspective. I think that's what the employee, they forget about all these multiple layers that are active duty transitioning, or the vets have already transitioned, have to still come back to and reintegrate themselves back in their family, let alone just your job too.
Right.
Yeah, because oftentimes the kids are the ones that actually get forgotten about. Nobody actually takes what the kid go through in the account. It's one of those things where it's always about the spouse or the actual soldier. Nobody thinks about the kid. The kid is one of those that goes through, because they didn't sign up for this.
Right.
The spouse, they married the soldier, know what they were getting into. The kid, they didn't expect any of this. So one of those things where they out there left to struggle by themselves, not having an outlet to actually express their emotions up, talk about what they're going through. And that's one thing that we said with Dream, we try to actually help the kids. We understand what you're going through. We're afraid, we're trying to help you out. You're not forgotten. So that's the big thing with kids, because if not, it's one of the things where just like with the kids, if you ask them what they're doing, I'm fine. They won't go into depth and tell you how they actually feel, because one, they don't know how to express how they're feeling.
Right.
They haven't got to the age where they're thinking, okay, well, I'm feeling this way, this is why I'm feeling this way. They just know their parents are going, they miss them. They don't know how to express what that's doing to them. So.
And sometimes they don't even understand what their feelings, right? Like I don't know why I'm feeling this way.
That's right.
And they don't. So if they don't know what they're feeling, they can't express it.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and sometimes people try to shelter things from them, thinking they're protecting them, versus the opposite. So that's one thing we would do. We would talk to our, especially our oldest daughter. She's the one who went through deployment after deployment. Even I tell people school. So like some of these soldiers, they go away for schools. He had a 6-month school, before that was almost like a deployment, right? Being gone, him in one side of the country, we're on another side of the country, just trying to figure out what life looks about, rapid TDYs, to get prepared to deploy. So many layers, and I think that, like for me to be able to work on military bases, serve in the capacity with active duty who are transitioned, most spouses don't get to do that at different levels, right? And that was the thing. It was just like so heartbreaking, and it was like beyond him, but I was just like, we have to do something. I don't care what it looks like, and we need to be able to have the flexibility to change it and not have so much red tape when it's not working, I see some organizations like, this is how we've always done it, whether it's effective or not, they continue to do it because it's tied to funding.
Right.
And God forbid they shift their funding, then I understand that side too. So for us, it was just like, let's just go boots on the ground. And that's another reason why we call it combat boots in a boardroom. Yeah, because your combat boots will transition to someone's boardroom after you get out, whether it is a table or not. If you're working in a business, there's a boardroom behind it. And so we wanted that name. It's a little bit long, but it has a meaning behind it too.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then also another thing that gets lost in the shelf was working with your coworkers. Because one of the things when you're in the military, you actually start a new job. Sometimes you have other coworkers who resent you because you're an Army. The only reason you got that job is because you're an Army, or they think you're going to bring the Army way of life to the actual job. So some things you have to understand, okay, how do I work with you? It's like, oh, you're going to expect me to iron my boots, you're going to expect me to stand in parade rest, you're going to expect me to go in and just have this change my mindset. It's going to be strict, we're going to be regimented. It's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. I want to learn how to integrate with you. How do you do certain things? I'm not trying to bring my way like this. I'm trying to understand how do I function in this capacity. So, and that's one of the things actually, because I know I've seen it as well as one of the things you actually start a job, people like, they already got this hatred, not want to say hatred, but this dislike to you because they think that you're only here because you're in the military. And
right.
That's not certain, and that's not the case. Like, I'm here trying to learn a job and do it just like you are.
Right.
So, and that's one of.
Okay, especially like, I think his first job transition was a supervisor job too, and having a mixed bag of some military but a lot of civilians in there, to have those layers, the preconceived notions about
right.
you before you even start, and get the chance. And sometimes they do, because that's what attracts certain employers. They want that structure, right? So then your resume sometimes can go to the top, sometimes it could go to the bottom. It just kind of depends on what they're looking for. So.
Right. And I think a lot of cases it's probably like a confirmation bias. Somebody sees former military come in, maybe they saw somebody else acting a certain way or they perceived it that way. Now the next person comes in and they're just confirming that bias that they already have about them. Like, okay, they only have this position because they're military.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
The stuff that we've covered, I feel like touching multiple things, especially the children aspect of it, I think they do sometimes get lost in the sauce. So as we were growing, we're like, you know what, we need a mascot. Because different from us to be in the face, shift the face over to something that everybody can relate to. And sometimes it's kind of fun when we bring Dreamer out. They're like, what is he? And then them guessing that he's a light bulb. Because sometimes we want the aha to go off in the adults as well as the kids. Right? So for us to bring Dreamer to different things, and it's just like when that aha goes off for you, and you figure out who you are, it's kind of like we're doing what we're supposed to do.
Right.
And so for us, we don't even have a timetable. And one thing I do love about founding something is too, we have a board, we have executive board, we have an advisory board, but they understand we don't let people move it faster than we're able to sustain it, right? Because it's not about keeping up with this person. This one here's like, we need to get it right. And however long that takes, if we have to tweak it, make adjustments to it, we're okay with that. But to me, because we're connected to it, this is not, like I tell people all the time, this isn't like a gimmick for us. Some people get into things for different reasons. This is our life journey.
Right. And you are both connected to the military, right? So it's not like you were not military and you said, hey, I see there's a need for this.
Yeah.
And you said, let's do this because it's going to be lucrative for us.
Yeah.
Right?
Different.
It's like there's a personal connection there.
Absolutely.
Right? And then you can also empathize with military members because you've been there before.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like I did all my research, I figured it all out,
Yeah.
I know what they're feeling. No, you don't know what they're feeling.
You don't know what they're
right?
feeling.
And it's like going back to what you were saying about certain organizations, they do it that way because they've always done it that way. And I've seen that across all industries. They're like, well, that's the way we've always done it. We're just going to continue doing that. We're not going to change it at all.
Nope.
Right? So...
And it's not effective.
Right, it's not effective. You know, it's like insanity, expecting a different result and doing the same thing over and over.
And I hear them say this, like, because there's a couple like, oh, but Lynnetta, we had 300 veterans show up for a job fair. And I was like, okay, but then how many are still there in 6 months? How many are there in 52 weeks? What out of that 300, who's still in position after? Who grew after in 2 years? Did they elevate from that position? Did the position that was offered to them equivalent to their actual skill set level? Because then sometimes those job fairs are so one-sided.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so, too, it's just like it's a quota, right? And so when I say that, this is not popular, right? I promise you that. They're not like, because I know what they have to do, but at the same time, when you've had people that you serve with, because here this year, someone in my office, active duty, committed suicide. A week later, another active duty committed suicide. So they can't even transition because they're mentally struggling while they're in.
Right.
And so to me, your quota numbers are not impressive to me, which is why Prosper, I don't want it to be huge numbers because I don't want them to get lost. I want them to have an intimate session every month that we go there. I want them to feel something different. I want them to get something that they didn't have, meet somebody, connect with somebody, which is where when I had briefed it to someone else before, a different group, and they were like, oh, I was like, max 20, but that's not the number I'm going for. And they were like, that's not a lot. Well, you guys get a lot and you don't do a follow-up.
Right. If you had 300 veterans and only 10 of them got employed, but you have 20 and 10 of them, you have a better success rate, don't you?
Yes. Yeah. That's what they don't see.
It's not about the quantity, but it's about the quality.
Absolutely.
Right?
And then do they live better? Do they have a better quality of life? Because then I can track them and I can follow up with them a lot better after the sessions are over, right? Then we turn around and they become alumni, right? And then they can help mentor the next group.